Next on the program is the Australian Speakeasy. David Dallow brought his team, and we're going to learn all about Speakeasy in Australia. David, please take it away.
Thank you, Tom. So what I was mainly wanting to do was to let people who may not know anything about Australian Speakeasy get a basic idea and welcome anyone who'd like to join us either in person if they're visiting Australia, or they can join one of many Zooms. Well, when I say many, 3 or 4 per week, whichever one they prefer to join, they're welcome to. Now, as you said before about teams, well, there are a couple of people who've also joined in, and I certainly don't want to talk about myself, but I'd like to welcome Jodie and Peter, and I think Marc might be here. So I was going to start with Jodie to just let her introduce herself, where she's from, what she does, and maybe a few words on her angle on stuttering as it affects her. Is that okay, Jodie?
Sure. So hi, I've spoken up a couple of times so far. So I'm a person who stutters. I graduated as a speech pathologist just a few years ago. I went in as a mature age student under a bit of a push from my speech pathologist, who thought that I'd make a good speechy. So it was nice to hear that from her and have that backing. And I also have a child who started to have a stutter. So I feel like I tick all of the boxes. I'm a person who stutters, a speechy, and a mum to a child who stutters. When she first, and I joined this, part of the Speakeasy community, I really started joining them regularly back in, when was it, Peter? Probably about...
A long time ago.
Yeah, maybe about 10 years ago. Started joining the online group. And it's been a good avenue to connect with other people who stutter, and our aim is to practice a fluency technique to give us some strategies to manage life outside of these comfort walls of fellow people who stutter, who have lots of patience for us and and we feel more comfortable talking with. So practicing alongside like-minded people and who understand our struggles, and you can talk about your struggles, has been quite good to for me to continue to do what I do in my professional world, but also in my personal life. So I think keeping on top of it and maintaining your technique is, quite important, because as they say, you don't use it, you lose it. So regular practice and keeping up, and also it's a bit of a camaraderie as well, to be around other people who stutter and to see them across their life and changes that happen in their families. And it's a lovely community to be involved in as well. So, and then I think when COVID hit in Australia, touch wood, we weren't copped with it as much in Queensland as the poor fellas down in Victoria. They were in lockdown for a while, or other places overseas. But I think COVID really brought about people connecting online more often, which gave us the opportunity to do this and do this regularly. In Queensland, they still have some face-to-face groups that they meet up at the library in Brisbane. Am I right, David? And they have retreats once a year. Down in Sydney, they meet up quite regularly face-to-face. and in Canberra. So different places around Australia, they either have online groups or face-to-face groups. Yeah, so that's my angle. Would you like to expand on it, Marc or Peter?
Yes, any questions to Jodie while she's front and centre? No questions? Is Peter or Marc?
Actually, yes, I wouldn't mind saying something. I find that I've been involved with the Speakeasy Association in Queensland ever since I moved from Canberra, where I did my intensive speech in smooth speech, and the technique we use in Queensland is predominantly smooth speech. And I'll be curious what other people around the world use as their technique. About you, Phyllis, from New Zealand. Do you use smooth speech?
It was muted, I'm sorry. I went to a course a long time ago in that, and it helped for a bit. And I think at my old age, I've found through writing and sharing, and these groups on here really helped me. And so I just try and share. But I do breathing exercises in the morning and stuff like that too. But I know my friend Alexis Parker Connolly, she's in England and we Skype once a week, and she uses it too, and it's really helped her too, and so it does work.
Are you finished, Marc, or more questions?
David, I was going to add to that bit about someone in another group was saying how expensive it is for them to go to speech therapy. Well, I think it was in the Chinese community. They were saying it was so expensive to go to speech therapy, and how do they get the help when they don't have access to the resources? I think we're lucky in Australia that, one, we've got this speakeasy group so people can come together and practice, and we've got some veterans in the speechy community that are really quite good at teaching the technique and supporting other people who stutter. And we also have access to some university clinics who offer intensives. It's not as common these days as what it used to be, but the Australian Stuttering Research Centre at the moment was taking a group of stutterers to do some therapy. And I think in Melbourne at the Trove, they do it so often as well. Uni clinics, actually the Australian ACU, Australian Catholic University in Brisbane and in Sydney do run stuttering clinics as well. So we've got access to some universities who offer therapy for either cheap or really free, or this speakeasy community. So I think that's how we've had access to it in Australia, is through those community groups or unis, because otherwise it is expensive and we don't get the funding for therapy in Australia for stutterers. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Thanks, Jodie. Phyllis, did you have anything you wanted to ask or add or comment?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Am I right in saying there's only really us four on this Zoom call? Myself, Jodie, Phyllis, and Peter. Marc, sorry, 5? Is there anybody else out there listening?
There are 12 people, David.
Oh, so there is more than 5, because it's a bit like just preaching to the converted, like a regular Zoom call we have once a week. That's okay.
Yeah,
All right,
people pop in and out during these
Yep.
sessions too, David. So there might be 30 and then there's 15 and it just fluctuates. Yeah.
Yep. So I'll just, before I say much, Peter Greville, did you want to say anything at all about your experience in Sydney or your plans for the future or aspirations?
Just going on from what Jodie said, there was something on Facebook this morning about the UTS doing a course, but I think the majority of the courses are for children. I can't find it at the moment, but yeah, I think both the ASRC and the UTS are doing, they're calling for kids to come in to try and help them, because as Jodie said, a lot of the courses have kind of collapsed or closed down because of lack of funding. Back in the late 70s and 80s, well, I did mine in 1971, and I think there was about 3 or 4 hospitals, university hospitals doing it then. That's where we got all our members from, because Speakeasy back in the 70s was were overflowing with people. It was kind of a heyday of Smooth Speech Toastmasters and the Australian Speakeasy Association, because in Toastmasters we used to have about 20 to 30 people there, but that's sadly gone down. We've only got 5 or 6 paid up members now, and that's looks like it's going to have to close down or merge with a fluent Toastmasters club, which will be not so good. But the Speakeasy, I think New South Wales, we still have about 50 or 60 paid up members, which is good. All the in Victoria is still going by its fingernails. Queensland's by its fingernails, and West Australia as well, that's still continuing. But since the closure of all the intensives, it's a shame to see everything kind of just collapsed. But as Jodie said, with COVID, it's certainly brought a big boom to Zoom and the meetings. In a way, it's been a good thing. In a way, it's been a bad thing because we're not getting so much face to face. In Sydney, we still have our monthly meetings in Burwood, which bring about 10, 20 people. Before COVID, we used to have about 20 or 30 people, which was quite good. We did do some online ones at the time. That was quite popular because everyone from interstate and even overseas could attend it. And we do have our weekly meetings on a Sunday, which bring in several overseas people, which is good, and interstate. And then a numbers there of they bounce up and down. I think one time we had about 15 or 16 people on one night, and then it drilled down to 2 or 3. So it just depends on the night. And it's hard to get the young ones enthused into our groups as well. It's many of us, the oldies who've been there and done that, who kind of stay on. It's, I know the young ones probably have more of a life to live. They go out and can party until after midnight and drink till the pubs dry, but it's very hard to get them on continually all the time. It's it'd be good to get them on. I mean, back in the 70s, when we were all young then, we always used to come and join these events in person, which was good. But then as everyone got a life and everything, we moved on, is starting to fall away. It's be good to get everyone back.
Boys, a bit of a theme of the morning has been around stuttering acceptance, or stuttering how you go at work or through education, and how we've been able to succeed. Did you want to share some of your experiences of growing up and what life is like in Australia, growing up with a stutter? But it would have been much different in the 70s to what we are now. But
well, I mean, some of the stories I've heard from people in the group, they had a hell of a time at school. I mean, I went to about 3 or 4 different schools in different states, and Geelong and Canberra, and I was never bullied once. Well, the kids were quite good about it. I mean, I don't recall a great deal. I did have trouble, I know. I mean, my stutter was quite bad at the start, but I was never teased or anything about it. And even at work, it didn't really, I suppose it bothered me personally, because having to answer the phone all the time, that made things difficult. But I think I was able to cope quite well. But there was, you know, as I said, back in the early days, there was a lot of good groups and support, which was very good.
Thank you, Peter. Did anybody else want to make any points before I say my little piece?
Well, yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just pop in and tell you a little bit about my history. Similar to Peter, I had a father who was very ambitious with his career. So we end up moving from inner Sydney to outer Sydney, Sydney to Canberra, Canberra to Brisbane. And I found that very traumatic because my surname is quite long. It has 10 letters. And I found in primary school, my issue wasn't with fellow students, it was with my teachers. They used to make fun of me in the playground. I still remember her name when I was in grade 2. Her name was Mrs. Baxter. And she goes, "Oh, here comes Mama Marc." I always remember that. It's amazing what you remember. And so that was my experience. When I was in my early 20s, I joined a bushwalking club in Brisbane, and there was one smart ass there, very competent bushwalker. His name, short fella, so he already had a complex, I guess. I remember he had a go at me because you join there at 7 o'clock in the morning and you then work out who's going to drive off to the national park, and I must have stuttered or something, and he made sure that everyone knew that I had a stutter. So that was the only real issue I had as an adult. And I was quite fortunate that at Canberra, I did my intensive, and that went for 3 weeks. And the first week we spent in the Canberra hospital, I think it was, in the mental health ward. And we had to share the mess hall with the inpatients. So they all looked at us and we all looked back at them. But that was my journey in smooth speech. Talking about self-acceptance, when I was getting married probably 20 years ago now, and there was a fella coming over from the US which had a course called NLP for stutterers, and he was presenting at the Speakeasy Association conference over in Perth, and that would have been 2004. No, yeah, I think it was in 2004 or 2003. I can't remember. And I went over there early before the conference, and I did that 1 week's course, and that helped me not give a stuff. And once I didn't give a stuff about my stutter, it actually improved. Where before, I guess I was so conscious that when I went up to the shop to order something, all I thought about was if I stuttered, the person who was serving me would think I'm a complete idiot. And of course, by the time it was your turn at the front of the queue, sure enough, you stuttered because you worked your way up to it. And that NLP, called New Linguistic Programming, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, it taught me that that person may have all sorts of problems. They're not even thinking about me, and how arrogant of me to be thinking that the whole world's thinking about my stutter, you know? And so, for instance, a person behind the counter could have just had their lost their house, broke up with their partner, got their car stolen. They got their own problems, their own life. All they want from me is my order and the money. And that really helped me thinking that my stutter was not the center of the universe, and that's all what anybody focused on. So that was one way of self-acceptance, not to give a stuff. So anyway, so I don't want to take up any more time. If you've got something there you want to speak about, David, I'll go on mute. Unless somebody has a question.
Yes, any questions for Marc?
All right.
Right.
Cool.
Look, I've got about 5 minutes of things I want to say, and then I've actually, because of a time mix-up, I'm in the middle of a speakeasy barbecue at Kevin's and the barbecue's on, but that's okay. What I do want to share, especially for Phyllis, who may want to share with somebody else, I don't know. Phyllis, if ever you want to come to Australia or look at any details, that's our website on there.
Yes, that's really good.
And,
Thank you.
and the main contact stuff is if you go onto groups, and then there is each state. Now, obviously, the people you met today, bar Peter, are from Queensland, and the big things we have are an annual retreat, and those photographs are from people at the retreat. We do have also a Zoom night every Wednesday. We have a bi-monthly practice in Brisbane at a library, but more easily there's a calendar there which will show you, if you download that, it'll show you what's on in May, etc.
Thank you so much.
What I'd love to see is some network, whereas you or somebody else would say, hey, I'm coming to Brisbane for a week. Would anyone like to meet me or hook up, or even just exchange phone numbers? So if a visitor was lost or wanted some advice on a car hire or a bus or a train, they wouldn't feel alone. I think that would be so easy to do that, you know?
Yeah,
so
that sounds good.
That's what I'm trying to sort of share a little bit there.
It's really good.
I'm not on my own computer, so it's a bit, there was the advert we advertised this, Tom, for everybody, even with the 5 reasons to join us. And that's the advert for our annual retreat. That's on very soon. And that's about all there was there.
That's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, so we get nobody from New Zealand that I'm aware of who joins us. I've emailed a few New Zealand groups and had no reply to any great extent. So maybe I'm going down the wrong path or something, but that's okay. In conclusion, I want to say that I fully appreciate the acceptance angle and know why it's happening, but I feel it's a bit of a counterproductive thing, except in some, let's say, rare cases, because I'm imagining if I were to ask everybody on this Zoom if they can sing without stuttering or talk to their pet dog without stuttering, most would say yes. So it's like at school now, everyone gets a prize. You can come last, you get a participation trophy or ribbon. Back when I was younger, I felt bad about it, but it drove me to do something about it. And it drives me today to care about other people who do have a stutter. I think through life, you get desensitized to it, which is in a way acceptance. You can do lots of practice. You learn to relax. You learn breathing techniques. And if you apply those things, I've found most people can at least improve. I'm not sort of trying to say a cure 100%, but I've met many people, some who still stutter, but some who can speak very, very fluently. And those who can speak very, very fluently usually are so happy about it. So in conclusion, thanks for all who joined. And Jodie joins a group in Melbourne, as does Peter. So if you look on our website under groups, again, now if I get this, I'm on Kevin's, where are we? Here we go, the national one. There's some information there about the one from Melbourne. So there are quite a few. And Phyllis, there's also a ladies only group, which if you're interested, I'm sure Jodie can give you more information perhaps. So look, Tom, I want to say thank you for the time to share, and thanks for all who've been here. And unless there's any questions, I'll go join the barbecue.
Looks like we have one question for you, David. Rick had his hand raised up.
I didn't see it, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm on a friend's laptop, so I'm not overly used to it. This one,
Okay.
Go on.
Yes, thank you, David, for the wonderful presentation. So, do you consider yourself recovered, or what was your stuttering like when you were younger? Because as we know, as we get older and older, when you're 60 or 70, you don't give a shit. So what's your advice to young people who stutter? And, just, if not acceptance, is your answer practice? Thank you.
My answer, if I had to think, was there one word which is not the correct word, but is the best of a bad bunch, I would say desensitize, because it's my belief if you went into McDonald's and ordered the same thing 100 times, eventually you would find it so easy. There may be other issues which stop you doing it, but for most people, it's this. I used to go in a queue to McDonald's or something. I'd look behind me, I'd look to my left and right and say, these people are watching me. And I was, perhaps terrified's the wrong word, but I was so self-conscious. I once went into a newsagent to, in those days, buy a TV guide, and the shop owner's lovely daughter was there. And I asked her fluently what I wanted, but it was a bit quick and she wasn't quite paying attention. And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, what was that again?" And her father looked around and the person behind me looked at me, and you can guess the rest. It wasn't pretty. But now I'm fairly well desensitized. One thing in particular is my job or my previous work. I've been going around to houses delivering legal papers or debt-related matters. So I'm speaking to strangers 10 times a week. And in the beginning, that was difficult. I used to tape record myself to see how I went. And I wanted a high standard. I'm not saying I'm high, but for me, I'm higher now than I ever was back when I was 20 or 30. So I've also believed that a lot of people speak way too quickly to really have a smooth speech. I think speaking too fast, it's difficult as a listener to take it in. Some people speak way too fast to take in much at all. If you listen to someone like Barack Obama, he's amazing how he speaks. He says something and he pauses and he sometimes repeats it. Like Tom, I'm enjoying this. Pause. Let's do it again. Pause. So there's lots of little things. You wouldn't call them speech therapy, but it's just public speaking manners or style, perhaps the word is. So I hope that makes some little sense. Anything else? Nothing else? Tom, thank you. And everybody else, I'm going to be rude and leave, but I might be able to rejoin you towards the end tonight. Has it still got about 5 hours to go, Tom?
We have 5 hours to go. Yes,
Right.
sir.
I should be home by then. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, David.
Bye.
Thank you for the rest of your team. Do you have anything to add, Jodie, Peter, or Marc?
I was going to add something in regards to the therapy and how stuttering is like treated in Australia. Like when I didn't go for therapy. I took myself there when I was in my early 20s because when I was younger, my dad was like, had a "you'll be right" attitude and just put me in difficult talking situations and made me do it. He's an army officer and very like, get on with it, you can do it. So, but yeah, when I went to therapy, there's only much fluency therapy, there's speech he can teach you, because you're only going to use it in those 4 walls. You have to be comfortable like to use that technique or to make it yourself and to own part of it and still speak like Jodie. I didn't want to walk out speaking like how they were teaching me to speak. So you had to be comfortable and use some elements of the technique of what you wanted, but also there was another layer of no matter what I did, there was still so much like pressure and anxiety around stuttering that I saw an occupational therapist and a psychologist and did cognitive behavior therapy, and then later on acceptance and commitment therapy. So it was around about being present, being in the moment, accepting yourself, but then being mindful and not worry about all of these outside walls and pressures and noises and stuff outside of you. And I think that did so much more for me than learning this fluency technique did. And I think also, of course, it comes with age. It comes with experience.
What?
Shh.
What?
Be quiet. And it comes with
Mom.
wait. Yes, it's Lachlan and Abel. And then it comes with, and another thing too, I think, is personality. Like, I'm obviously an outgoing and talking person, so I think personality is a big factor. Like, you couldn't expect some stutterers who are naturally pretty shy and reserved and introverted to do what we do. Like, who would get on here and ramble on to a bunch of strangers? Like, I think it takes, that other layer of, we're excited to share, we're excited to talk to people, and that those differences have to be taken into account.